Hey, welcome back to the shop. I'm Jason, and today we've got my dad's truck back in the shop for a really simple audio and visual upgrade. You see, this truck came with the basic sync system that doesn't include navigation, CarPlay, or any of those fun features. This is a 2015, so he's got that dash in the middle, but it's somewhat useless. Eonon reached out to me and said, hey, would you like to test out our new portable radio, the P5, which I've got right here. So I said, of course I do. I'd love to see what it's all about. Now, I don't really have a use for it on my other cars at the moment. My teenage son, though, man, if he could get his act together and finally buy himself a car, he'd probably really love this thing because of all of the features that it has. But for now, what we're gonna do is install it on my dad's truck just before a road trip so that they can get 1,000 or so miles on it and see how much they really like it. Okay, so in the car here, we've got a couple of options to get the screen mounted up. Ideally, you don't want to block the driver's view, but as with most people, you've got stuff like this guy here, you've got phone holders up, and you want to be able to see what's going on. Now, I don't think blocking all of the view up here is exactly prudent, but a little bit up here, not a big deal. What I'm kind of picturing for this is to get it somewhere along this line, or maybe even a little bit lower. This car has a bunch of functions in the center screen that we do still need to get access to. Plus it has its own integrated backup camera and we want to be able to see that. So keeping the screen up somewhere in this region is going to be the most ideal, and it's going to be the least intrusive as far as view. And the buttons here, you've got downhill, traction, and hazards are still going to be accessible. We can choose to use the suction cup mount, which has a ball head on the end. Here it has an extension, and then the ball here to adjust. Maybe we could mount it up like that, but in this case, that's going to take up a little bit more space than I would like. I think it would be possible to disassemble the ball side here and use this mount to mount to our dash panel here. We installed this in another video linked down below so that we could add multiple accessories to this dash really easily. Or we could use this other mount. This has a built-in magnet on this side to connect to the screen, and it locks itself right on. And this side, you use sticky tape. I'll disconnect it here. And then the arm is a nice pliable unit so that you can get it adjusted exactly where you want it. Now, all of those seem like pretty solid options. And in this car, I think the option that I'm going to go for is I'm actually going to use this mount that we already have in place that's going to give us a little bit of flexibility with our current mounting situation. Both of these will work, and they're going to give you a lot of universal capability in a bunch of different cars, but depending on your circumstance, you might find a different way to mount it, much like what we're going to do here. So I'll go ahead and I'll pull this ball mount off. And the only reason I'm comfortable doing this is because this screen will have wireless CarPlay. Then we don't need the phone mounted up here anyhow. The phone can stay in the pocket and not get out and distracted. So then on here, we've got our adjustment ball. We'll pop this guy off. We'll double check that it's the same size ball as what is used on the extension arm, which I imagine it's pretty universal. Okay, that pops off there. Now the trick is it going to mount to the ball that we had? And yeah, I thought that'd be a universal fit right there. There we go, now it's screwing on, no problem. Okay, now we'll go back up to our mount. We'll just get this cinched up a little bit. Then we'll see which direction our screen goes on and we'll rotate. So on the back of the screen here, you can see it's got the little spot for the feet to go into. So if we put it on there, we'll slide this way. And it locks into place. Then we can turn the screen and get this adjusted to just about where we want it. Right, right here. We'll get everybody adjusted tight. Okay, now we've got great screen placement. We can still adjust this 100 different ways from Sunday, and we have access to our buttons down below. Next up, we need to get this guy powered up and see what the screen actually looks like. Now, what we're going to be doing is installing the Type-C connection. That's going to be to our power plug. And in this case, we're also going to be installing the aux cable because that's going to give us the best fidelity of sound as it connects to the car, and we don't have to worry about FM transmitter. We will talk about all the different options to connect when we get to that point though. So let's go ahead and screw or unscrew this, slide it to the side so we can see what's going on. And it is recommended to use their power cable so that you're getting appropriate voltage. We'll connect into the bottom Type-C connector. And we'll connect this one to the top auxiliary. We're going to bring these over to the side right here. And we'll readjust this about where we had it before. You can probably go back some, so let's do that. Now, we're going to run these cables down to the side. Depending, again, on your installation, you could run these around, up and through, or down through the dash. In this case, I might take the top center panel out later and run these wires down through the dash to our power and auxiliary ports down below. But for now, Mom and Dad are leaving on a road trip tomorrow, and we really want to get this thing tested. So we're going to get it plugged in, get these wires cleaned up and out of the way the best that we can for now, running right down the side here where they'll be out of the way. This power cable, you definitely have a lot of space. The auxiliary cable that's included here is a little bit shorter. We'll get this plugged in down here. And then on this truck, it has a line in for auxiliary right here. All right, looks like we're booting up already. Okay, so my parents actually ran the radio over the past 4 days and about 800 miles on a road trip. And I got a bunch of good feedback from them as far as how to use this and how they were using it. So let's first go over some of the functions on how this works and some of the ways that you might be able to possibly use it. For one, this is going to be our home screen here. On the bottom, you've got power, dimming. This button goes to our rear camera. FM is going to change our different output modes. And this will change depending on which output mode you're using. So if it were on Bluetooth, it'd say Bluetooth. And then on the far right, we can change our screen orientation to turn this up and down. Hey, Jason from the future here, interrupting real quick, because as I'm editing this, I realized that my footage of the screen vertical was all messed up. I don't know if I hit the camera or what happened in between, but let me show you what exactly it's supposed to look like. See, when you hit the little button in the bottom right corner, that adjusts the screen into vertical mode. This is pretty unique for this type of device in a car setting, as not anything else on the market that I'm aware of has vertical. This is going to allow you to fit it kind of like the Tesla screen style into a lot more applications. You can see obviously in my application we're running it horizontal, but when you hit that button it asks you to confirm that you want to run vertical. You switch it over to vertical and here's what you got. You still have all your same CarPlay, Android Auto, and AirPlay functions that you do horizontal, but you have this great vertical clear screen. I think that that's going to work out for a lot more people than just horizontal. And one other cool feature, for those of you that want to do things in the car that maybe you're not supposed to do all the time, like say watch YouTube and stay up to date on your favorite YouTuber, you know, this guy here, you can go in to AirPlay and you can screencast over and get your stuff here linked up in the car as well. That was a funny short. Yeah, he's looking at M5 content. So AirPlay is really cool because you can put stuff up on the screen that might not otherwise be available with CarPlay. Okay, now back to what we were doing. Now that we've got our orientation back in place, let's go ahead and we'll get connected to a phone. To connect to a phone, you're going to go to CarPlay, and this is speaking from an Apple user's perspective. I don't have any Android products, so we're going to connect to CarPlay. I've got my phone connected via Bluetooth so I can swipe through to my different apps. You can see here like one app that I have is Bimmerlink, which allows me to connect to a OBD dongle and be able to view all sorts of data on my BMWs. We're in a Ford right now, so that doesn't exactly work. But I imagine if you had the Torque app, you could probably use that here. And then you get whatever apps that you have available on your phone. The little white dot that sits down here in the corner, that white dot allows you to get to a quick search of different pages inside of our screen. So home, the type of sound that we're emitting, the brightness, and the last one is, go back to it, your camera. You can actually turn on the camera without activating it via the reverse input signal, which is pretty cool. You could wire this up so that, like right now, we're not moving. If you had a trailer back there or something going on, you could mount this camera in any number of different locations so that you'd have a whole new view while driving of what's going on behind you. That's a pretty cool feature. And the cable is long enough to make it all the way up into the cab here, depending on how you run it under the truck, over into the cab, or whatever that might look like. Our settings page, you can also go into the reverse setting and you can adjust where each one of these little indicators lies based on your comfort preference. Now obviously there's no steering input on here, so they're not going to be moving and whatnot, but this will give you a good indicator of exactly where you want to set these, and you can go to the back and walk around and get that set up exactly how you want it, measure it out. The rest of these are pretty self-explanatory. You've got the tones, image mirroring, screensaver, language, factory reset, screen rotation, driving position, clearing your connections, and assistive touch. We'll back out of there and we're going to go back into how we're going to get sound from this guy down to our radio. So in CarPlay, you have lots of options for sound and music and whatnot. So we'll pick one. I'm going to go over to Pandora. You can see the screen has great response as I'm tapping and pushing on it. And we're in Pandora now. And we're going to pick how we're going to connect to the car. So let's go back over here. We're using the FM transmitter on the car. And we need to make sure that we're playing. So back, we'll click on a station. And we're going to play through the car via the FM transmitter. Another way that we could connect to the car would be using an aux input cable like this one. This truck has something going on with the aux, so when I plug in, it has a bit of static. When I plug this in on two of my other cars, it works just fine, so I know it's not in the unit. One third and final way to connect to a vehicle via sound is through Bluetooth audio. The Bluetooth audio function is a little bit different because what you're doing there is you're going down into your radio functions in here in the actual radio, and we're connecting the phone to the Bluetooth sound, and then this will display what's going on in CarPlay. So that's a little bit complicated and I don't think makes total sense in my book, but the sound does actually work quite well that way. And then our final sound output will be speaker via the built-in speaker on the unit here. Now, obviously that's not going to be your best sound, but because this is portable and you can move it around to all sorts of different devices, that's a pretty nice touch. One complication that my parents had while they were out driving around was they were going to a bunch of new locations and they wanted to use Waze. Well, they were using satellite radio on the truck and Waze through here. So the sound was coming from the truck, but my dad wanted to be able to hear the different sounds from Waze itself. And unfortunately, the sound wasn't coming out because they weren't playing a radio station. So what he had to do was go in to the speaker options. Let me go back here one more time. We'll go home. And then our speaker options for audio output and hit speaker. That means that the speakers built into the unit would output the voice control or commands so that he knew where to turn. Besides CarPlay and Android Auto, you have AirPlay and SuperLink so that you can stream all sorts of different content into this unit and have a nice, clear, big screen to use for just about anything that you might want to. So all in all, I'm pretty impressed with this little head unit. This adds a lot of functions to vehicles that most of them, at least older vehicles, don't have. Now obviously a lot of new cars have a bunch of cool tech, fun things, but we're talking about new cars. We can't all afford new cars. I'm driving a $500 X5 right now, and it has some of these features, but not all of them. I just thought that this would work out really well in my dad's truck and help him out in his driving and what's going on. So I'm really impressed with this thing. The price is fantastic for what you get. It's clear, it's fast, it has a bunch of functions, and it allows a lot more usability, I would say, in the car with modern tech using your phone through CarPlay. Now, the one thing that I did run into is it doesn't have an auto shut-off feature built into it based off of a low voltage disconnect. And that problem is only because on this truck, the power supply, it stays on for like 1 hour and 15 minutes after the truck is off. So in the long run, that could weaken the battery, especially if you have a vehicle that it stays on 24/7 or whatever it might be. So you have to either make sure to wire it into a special relay system, unplug it, or hit the power button on your way out of the car. In my case, I'm reprogramming the truck's battery management system so that it turns off after 15 seconds using ForeScan. You can take a look at my video down below if you have an F-Series like this, and I'll show you how to do it. For now, we're going to keep using this, enjoying it, and I'll get more feedback in the future from my parents on any other changes or whatnot that they've come up with as they've used it. The one thing, like I mentioned before, is they would like to be able to listen to the radio on the truck through Sirius XM and get their Waze directions piped into the truck versus into there, but I don't think that's going to exactly work because you're only using one audio source at a time. It is what it is. Again, still really impressed with this thing. And when my teenager gets a car, that was the one playing on the skateboard, I bet it'll be time for him to add something like this because we're going to be looking at some pretty cheap cars for him. Anyhow, I really appreciate you watching. Like, subscribe, comment. Take a look at the link down below if you want to get one of these P5s for your vehicle, your truck, your boat, your whatever it might be. It's going to be a really good addition to your dash and functionality. Appreciate you watching. I'll catch you in the next one.